Next month, public schools in South Carolina will be peddling LGBTQ talking points and gender confusion, all under the guise of celebrating Black History Month. Did you know that, black folks, that your special month is being co-opted by the gay community? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Now, more than ever, conservatives need to support one another. All of our content at FreedomProject, all of it, including the show, is made possible by donors. It is also fair to say, and accurate to say, that all of the programming you're watching, from Katie's Healthy Republic to the Dr. Duke Show to Dave Fiorazzo to all the segments that we do, are being monitored and demonetized and censored by the tech giants. So we exist because you watch and enjoy, and we hope that you'll consider supporting our Patriot Club. It's one of the ways we try to raise money for the show, and it's a one-time tax-deductible donation of $99. You get this handy-dandy little tumbler for doing so and our everlasting gratitude, and it keeps the show moving forward. Simply head over to patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to show your support. All right, Katie joins us now with that look at the health of our republic.
He's been president for 1 week, team. So, what has Joe Biden done? Spoiler, not much beneficial to Americans. Let me explain. Before we kick off, team, tell me in the comments which of the gazillion executive orders President Biden signed this past week that you think is most destructive to the country. I know I'm requesting a difficult task of you, but stay strong in the name of unity. Now, 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour. It didn't matter to Joe Biden on the timing of signing away American freedoms because, as we know, he doesn't know what time it is anyway, and he doesn't even know what he is signing on those executive orders. And then, if he even has a remote idea of what he is signing, don't you dare try your hand at journalism and ask a question that is actually pertinent to the American people's ability to function in a free society. Psh.
Is that high enough? Shouldn't you set the bar higher? That's basically where the U.S. is right now.
When I announced it, you all said it's not possible. Come on, give me a break, man.
Give me a break, man. Not even 24 hours in, and Joe needs a break from writing his name and ruining lives. It's simply exhausting. Look how hard he's working. Those other presidents didn't work this hard, man. I mean, they signed a handful of executive orders in the first 2 weeks, and Biden has already signed 15 in the first 24 hours. He's like superhuman or something.
Come on, folks.
But this is normal, right? Because Biden is a return to normalcy, and we better all get in line with that. Yeah. Fall in line with this normalcy that includes a return to one world order, or as the dictators like to call it, the World Health Organization. No need to pay for your student loans because the hardworking American middle class will cover it for you, and don't pay your rent or mortgage for the same reason. But those middle class workers will soon be out of work since Biden ordered a stop to the Keystone XL pipeline in the name of environmental justice. Who needs those 11,000 skilled labor jobs, or the other 60,000 jobs in support industries, or the billions of dollars in wages and billions more for American contractors and suppliers? It's all about environmental justice. So of course America was also reinserted into the Paris Agreement, which means absolutely nothing for anything beneficial to the climate because science is science, unless it's politics. And that leads us to Biden's newest minion, Screw Tapes Junior Demon Wormwood, or Dr. Anthony Fauci, who got in on the science to bring more flip-flop-flip-it regarding COVID-19. His newest thing is to say we need to wear 2 masks to help defeat COVID.
So if you have a physical covering with one layer, you put another layer on, it just makes common sense that it likely would be more effective. And that's the reason why you see people either double masking or doing a version of an N95.
Oh yeah, common sense. But what about science? Fauci now believes that we should wear 2 masks instead of 1. But why stop with that, dictate evil emperor? Why not 3, 4, 5? But again, Don't you dare question what the administration is doing, especially when they are being hypocritical. Because even though an executive order was dedicated to a national mask mandate, Biden doesn't need to follow that.
I think, Steve, he was celebrating an evening of a historic day in our country, and certainly he signed the mask mandate because it's a way to send a message to the American public about the importance of wearing masks, how it can save tens of thousands of lives. We take a number of COVID precautions, as you know here, in terms of testing, social distancing, mask wearing ourselves, as we do every single day. But I don't know that I have more for you on it than that.
The wheels are spinning, but nothing productive is churning out. Team, I hope you've settled in by now because we have more dictates to cover, even worse than the ones I've already said. Just hit the share button now so you are not alone in your utter disgust. Do it, because again, I say, it's all in the name of unity. On the note of COVID, we are to believe that it's Biden and his team who will cure COVID by just saying it will be so. Poof, it's gone. So now you can return to school, open up the cities, go about your business, but not your small business because that has already been decimated by the lockdown orders.
And now that we are in purple tier for those vast majority of counties means restaurants can open for outdoor dining with modifications. Nail hair salons can open with modifications. Certain youth sports can resume for competition in particular.
And give all the credit to Biden for the vaccines too. Even though under President Trump and that thing they called Operation Warp Speed, the vaccine was rapidly developed and on its way to millions and millions of Americans. But it's all Joe for the credit.
Week before they're saying, Biden, you crazy? You can't do 100 million in 100 days. Well, we're going to, God willing, not only do 100 million, we're going to do more than that.
Such smug arrogance right there. As predicted, Biden wants to take all credit for something he had nothing to do with. True coattail rider right there. That's what Build Back Better actually means. But I want to know, what the Sam Hill does this mean?
We need to make the issue of racial equity not just an issue for any one department of government. It has to be the business of the whole of government. That's why I issued, on one of the first days, my whole of government executive order that will, for the first time, advance equity for all throughout our federal policies and institutions.
Equity, equity, equity for all. So that's why in 1 week's time, Biden put a stop to the building of the border wall, then said, go, be free, cheesy bread. Although all-American Texas put a quick kibosh to that one. But Biden still signed an order for those cheesy breads to be counted in the census, even though they're not citizens. But we will make all 11 million of them citizens within 5 years because a certain political party needs their votes. Or, they could just repeat what they did in the past election. Anywho, Biden wants illegals allowed out, but transgenders to be back in regarding the military. And girls are shoved to the side because males can compete in girls' sports if they say so. #MeToo no more. But the most disturbing of all that Biden's demons did in the first week was give the go-ahead to end human life. And not like the narrative of saying all cops murder black and brown bodies, but real murder coming from abortion. Whoa, 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 you may say. Biden's a devout Catholic.
But I will just take the opportunity to remind all of you that he is a devout Catholic and somebody who attends church regularly. He started his day attending church with his family this morning.
Because that's all it takes, beginning the day by sitting in a pew. Biden then ended that day by preparing to sign an executive order to allow government to pay non-governmental groups to abort babies. Here's Wormwood to explain the revocation of the Mexico City policy, which had meant taxpayer money was not being sent overseas for abortion.
And it will be our policy to support women's and girls' sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights in the United States as well as globally.
Biden gets away with all these activities through executive orders because our current generations don't know their history about what our Constitution is and what our government is meant to do, or more importantly, what it is not meant to do. So when Biden rescinds Trump's 1776 commission, which was formed to simply teach the true history of this country, it was applauded by the wokeists. See? It's racist! And yeah, let's teach the 1619 Project, which is social justice propaganda garbage put out by the Ministry of Truth at the New York Times. That's week one. Week one. Are you upset? Are you hopeless? Are you shaking your head and cursing the world? Go for it, but don't be complacent. Keep hold of your God-given rights because they are what protect us all from this complete government takeover. Stay optimistic and full of hope. Build up the people in your life and share this video with your friends and even those who are less friendly. Until next time, stay healthy, America.
All right, joined now by Alex Newman, our international correspondent. Alex, thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be with you, Duke.
In South Carolina, the government schools have decided they're going to actually use Black History Month as a way to slip in LGBTQ advocacy. So it's not enough things to talk about with race in this race-obsessed country of ours. We've got to mingle Black History Months with LGBTQ stuff. Talk about that, Alex.
Yeah, so what we found out was that in Spartanburg, in District 7, and this is actually happening across the country, but we just got the emails and the documents from Spartanburg, District 7, they are adding to the Black History Month propaganda the LGBT propaganda. And there's a very subtle connection taking place here. They're trying to teach the children that racism against black people is equivalent to disagreeing with homosexuality or recognizing the fact that people are born and remain either male or female. So they're trying to make opposition to homosexuality, opposition to gender confusion as noxious, as toxic as racism against black people. So that's why they're linking the two together. And we saw some of the documents, some of the PowerPoint presentations that are being used. It's unbelievable. You've got studies of intersectionality and lesbianism and systematic oppression and gender nonconformity and gender fluidity. And again, this is happening to little kids in one of the most conservative states, in one of the most conservative districts in America, Duke.
Yeah, and you know the really shocking thing, I like what you said there. If I were African American, or African Americans that I know, aren't going to be really happy about this. There was a huge battle a couple of years ago when they were trying to manipulate the 1964 Civil Rights Law to just sort of tuck gender confusion and transgenderism into the civil rights legislation. Just kind of quietly slip it in. And a lot of African American leaders were angry that this is a totally different thing. What happened to African Americans by law and by custom, what was done to them is unique in the history of, in some cases, in the history of the world. And what they wanted to do was to make it sound like LGBTQ people were the same boat. They're not. It was really offensive to a lot of African American leaders. And if I were African American, I'd be really bothered by the fact, doesn't the LGBTQ people have their own month? Why are you usurping this here? And slipping it in like this, part of it's actually working against black values, because we know that African Americans have a much less of a tolerance across the board for LGBTQ, for transgenderism. They're among the most conservative racially when it comes to embracing those things. So you're actually taking their chosen month, the month that is dedicated to their history, to work against black values in a very obvious way, to sort of use this as a way of brainwashing black people into your little LGBTQ cult.
That's exactly what's happening, Duke. And it's really ironic. The timing was perfect. The day I was writing this article for Freedom Project Media for the Newman Report, I also received an email from a friend of mine, a black minister, wonderful, wonderful man of God, Randy Short. He's conservative on a lot of issues, progressive on some issues. We see eye to eye on a lot of things. We don't see eye to eye on some things. But he sent me a preview for a new movie that's coming out. It's called Buck Breaking. And I encourage everybody to watch the preview. I linked to it in the article. It's a huge and very diverse coalition of black Americans making the argument that trying to promote homosexuality and gender confusion in the black community is actually an effort of white supremacists. It's a white supremacist plot to destroy the black family, to destroy black men, to confuse black children, and also to reduce the population of black people, because they know that homosexuals don't have children. They know that transgenders who sterilize themselves by mutilating their body or taking a bunch of hormones will not have children. And so they say this is actually direct white supremacy being forced on the black community. I encourage everybody to go watch that little clip, because you need to understand this. This is not anything to do with Black History Month. This is perversion. This is confusion being injected into something where it doesn't belong.
Well, and not only that, the privileged white culture has convinced black women more than any other racial ethnic minority that abortion is the way to go. More black babies murdered than any others. And so when are black people going to realize, black educators going to realize, black activists going to realize that the biggest enemy they face in the whole world is the white liberal? I want to talk about white liberals in response to African Americans after the break. Back again with Alex Newman, and we were just turning the corner. You wrote a great article for the Newman Report about how South Carolina schools, although this is happening all across the country, South Carolina schools, we have evidence that they're using Black History Month, the February, to actually promote values that many African Americans don't like, including a radical LGBTQ agenda. And at the end of our previous section, we talked about how I made the observation, when are African Americans going to realize that the most white supremacists, the most racist people in the country today are progressive, privileged white liberals? It is white liberals who have convinced black women to abort their babies at outstanding rates. It is white women and white progressives, white men and women, who have convinced African Americans that marriage was meaningless, that single motherhood is a norm. It is white liberals for 50 years now who have promised African Americans their support and not given it to them. We look at what Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden, again, catered to African Americans in the primaries, got the huge African American vote. And what has he done so far? He's privileged Native Americans. He's done a lot for Hispanics in his first week. Not a word about anything he's going to do to benefit African Americans. Once again, blacks are left on the plantation by white liberals. When are people going to realize this?
Well, there have been many militant black leaders who have said exactly what you just said, Duke, that white liberals are the most dangerous, the most wicked force when it comes to keeping black people down, keeping black people oppressed. And this is another perfect example of that, right? The data is very clear here. And it doesn't matter what so-called racial group you're a part of. And as a Christian, I even reject the whole concept of race, but it doesn't matter. The best model for a child to grow up in is a two-parent home with a mother and a father. There's nothing that comes even close to that in terms of having good outcomes in life, not committing crime, getting a good job, not being poor in the future. And yet here we have these ridiculous liberals trying to teach them that they should not have family, that they should pick a new gender. It is, I think, a targeted effort to destroy not just black Americans, but all Americans. And it just so happens that they focused in on black Americans first, and we've seen the consequences of that. And you know, when you really break this down, this has been going on for a long time. People like Margaret Sanger, I think, is a perfect example, the founder of Planned Parenthood. One of the things I used to do in college, we used to do pro-life activism, and we would print up these big signs with quotes from Margaret Sanger. She viewed black people as human weeds. She actually started the Negro Project to hire black ministers to go out and convince black women and black men that birth control and having small families and reducing their population was the key to success. And then she even said in one of the letters, we don't want word to get out that we're trying to exterminate the Negro race. Right, and then she would go speak at KKK meetings about how we need to shrink the population of black people. These people are so hypocritical. They're so wicked. And then they have the nerve to call conservatives racist. It's simply grotesque, dude.
Well, and think about the election of Senator Warnock in Georgia, who is a flat-out racist, African-American, speaking the language of Margaret Sanger. He believes, as a quote-unquote Christian minister, he believes that abortion through all 9 months of gestation, up until the baby's born, that is perfectly in the will of God. That is perfectly biblical. You're now getting black politicians who are Margaret Sanger acolytes. It's remarkable when you think about this, contributing to the destruction of black unborn babies. Staggering. And Georgia, of all states, went for that kind of nonsense. Shows you how powerful white liberals' control over these kinds of thought is. And when you go back a little bit, we're an education podcast. And you know, the one thing you didn't mention is, for 60 years now, white progressives, white liberals have been in charge of every aspect of American education. And you and I both know that no one suffered more under that liberal progressive regime than African Americans. Asians are doing great. Hispanics are doing better vis-a-vis blacks. Immigrants, Hispanics, are doing better. Why is it that under radical leftist control of education for 60 years, the one group that stays mired at the bottom is African Americans?
It's all by design, Duke. And in fact, in the book that I co-wrote about 6 years ago now with Dr. Sam Blumenfeld, who studied the American education system for 60 years, we have 2 chapters explaining what white liberals did to the black community using the indoctrination system masquerading as a public school system. It is an atrocity. It is a crime of massive proportions. That's why one of the reasons we call the book Crimes of the Educators. And I think people need to be held accountable, or this evil, this suppression of our people is going to continue for the foreseeable future.
It's time for some real education, and today we're wrapping up our exploration of the 3rd book in C.S. Lewis's space trilogy. It's called That Hideous Strength. Now, let's turn to Dr. Duke to give us the goods.
Perfectly willing to reintroduce the story again. All week, if you've been paying attention, and for those of you who are joining us just for today and aren't, we're doing 5 quotes Monday through Friday in instant classics from the 3rd book of C.S. Lewis's space trilogy. The first book is Out of the Silent Planet. The second book is Paralandra. Really recommend you read them. It's Christian science fiction. Really great stuff. The 3rd book takes place on Earth. It's called That Hideous Strength, and it is one of the great dystopian novels ever written. It is written in 1945. It's based on the first 2, but you don't have to have read the first 2 to read the 3rd. You could pick and get the premise of the book. So I urge you to do that. It's one of the great dystopian novels ever written. In 1945, Lewis predicted exactly what was going to be happening now, how Western culture was going to be co-opted by globalism, collectivism, Marxism, and what we stand to face. One of the things that Lewis was way ahead of his time in predicting is how journalism was going to be perverted. And one of the main characters is a young man named Mark. He's a sociologist. He has left his college position to be recruited by this nefarious organization called the NICE, who are responsible, the NICE, who are responsible for subverting Western culture. And it takes him a long time to figure out that he's being used. He's kind of thick in the head. He's very progressive. Doesn't dawn on him right away. He thinks he's doing the people's work. But he has a long conversation with one of the ministers of propaganda for the NICE. And she tells him what he's going to have to do. As you write your journalistic story, she says, here's how you use the journalists. Here's how you use media to misinform. Here's her advice to Mark. She says, all right, we want you to write the story down, but to camouflage it. Only for the present, of course. Once the thing gets going, we shan't have to bother about the great heart of the British public. We'll make the great heart what we want it to be. But in the meantime, it does make a difference how things are put, how they're written, how they're reported. For instance, if it were even whispered that the NICE wanted the power to experiment on criminals, you'd have all the old women of both sexes up in arms and yapping about humanity. But if you call it, if you and the media call it re-education of the maladjusted, and you have them all, then you'll have them all slobbering with delight that the brutal era of retributive punishment has at last come to an end. What a absolutely prescient thing. She continues, odd thing is, the word experiment is unpopular, but not the word experimental. You mustn't experiment on children, but offer the dear little kiddies free education in an experimental school attached to the NICE, and it's all suddenly correct. That's how you normatize this. If you pay even a mite, even if you pay a tiny little bit of attention to how the journalistic system in this country operates, it's that, right? How they massage and finesse what they call things, right? The way they rename things, the way they control the language. Americans who otherwise would scream and yell at what was going on in government go along happily if you give it the right name. 1945, C.S. Lewis. Please get a copy of That Hideous Strength. It's going to explain to you exactly where we are today.
Now, we want to take a moment and show a little love to our Patriot Club members who keep this show and our other shows going. And today, we'd like to give a shout out to Beth from Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you, Beth, for supporting us. And if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support the Patriot Club, and we're going to send you the awesome, stupendous, red signature tumbler. All you have to do to sign up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. What's the most widely printed book in the world? You may think it's the Bible, but au contraire, it's IKEA. You know that Swedish company? IKEA's catalog with more than 200 million copies. It's actually surpassed the printing of the Bible.
And people tell me Sweden's a socialist country.
Sweden.
And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends. That was my best Swedish chef. Let me translate it into Swedish for you. Boinga, boinga, doinga, doinga, boinga, doinga.